Hey, so when you think of flamenco, what pops into your head? Probably a dancer, maybe a fan, that passionate strum of a guitar, right? But what if I told you that's really just scratching the surface? Today, we're going deep. We're going to decode flamenco, not just as an art form, but as this incredibly complex musical language with a fascinating and often totally hidden history. All right, let's get into it.
So, let me ask you something. What in the world could possibly connect Russian classical composers, a super clever tax loophole, and a mother just bursting with pride? It sounds random, I know, but the answer is flamenco. And over the next few minutes, we're going to connect all those dots and unpack this incredible world.
First up, let's see how flamenco broke out of its homeland. We're going to explore how this music from Andalusia managed to capture the imagination of composers and audiences all over the globe.
Okay, so back in the mid-1800s, this idea called Nacionalismo started catching on everywhere in classical music. The whole point was to use a country's own folk traditions to create a sound that was uniquely theirs. And for Spanish composers like Manuel de Falla and Joaquim Turina, flamenco was the absolute perfect source code for crafting a truly Spanish sound.
But this wasn't just a Spanish thing. Oh no, the influence of flamenco spread like wildfire. You had French masters like Debussy and Ravel who became completely obsessed with its rhythms. And get this, all the way over in Russia, musical giants like Glinka and Rimsky-Korsakov were weaving the fiery sounds of Andalusia into their own work.
And check this out. This is a newspaper clipping from 1864, and it gives us such a cool window into how people heard flamenco back then. It's talking about the legendary singer Silverio Francanetti, and it describes his music as oriental. That one word tells us so much. To them, this wasn't just folk music. It sounded exotic, thrilling, and completely new.
That whole global fascination really sets the stage perfectly for our next chapter. And honestly, this is one of the best stories in music history. It's an amazing tale of how art, big business, and yeah, a little bit of family pride all collided to create a golden age for flamenco.
So you have these old, intimate little flamenco bars. They were called cafés cantantes, and they start fading out. Well, some very savvy entrepreneurs saw a huge opportunity. They thought, why keep this in small bars? Let's put flamenco on the biggest stages in the biggest theaters, not just in Spain, but all over the world. This was the birth of the opera flamenca.
But why call it flamenco opera? It sounds so grand. Well, the story goes it was totally spontaneous. The mother of this legendary singer, La Niña de los Peines, was in the audience. Her daughter was just belting out these incredibly powerful songs, these seguidillas, and in a moment of pure pride, her mom just shouted, "Ole y vino la opera flamenca, long live the flamenco opera."
What a great story, right? But you have to wonder, was a mother's proud outburst the real reason this massively popular new genre got its name? Or was there something a little more calculated going on behind the curtain?
And here is the brilliant twist. In 1926, the Spanish government brought in a new tax for public shows. Now, if you were a variety show, you got hit with a pretty steep 10% tax. But if you were considered scenic arts, a category that included opera, you only had to pay 3%. Suddenly, calling your flamenco show an opera wasn't just about sounding fancy, it was a financial masterstroke that saved promoters a ton of money. So, an impresario named Vadrines basically figured out this amazing little loophole. It was, as one person called it, a crude yet effective trick. And that trick didn't just save money. It literally gave a name to an entire golden age of flamenco. Just an incredible story of where art and economics collide.
Okay, for our last section, let's zoom all the way in. We're going to get into the nitty-gritty, the actual building blocks of the music itself, the grammar and the vocabulary that make flamenco sound the way it does.
You know, for centuries, flamenco was a purely oral tradition. You learned it by listening, by watching, by feeling it, not by reading sheet music. But now there's a system called notación to actually write it all down. And this creates a really interesting tension, right? Do you stay true to the spontaneous magic of a live performance, or do you write it down so that more people can learn it and share it?
So, what holds a flamenco piece together? Well, a key ingredient is something called the ostinato. It's just a repeating pattern of chords that creates this hypnotic, circular foundation. The best way to think of it is like the canvas. The ostinato provides the background, and that allows the singer or the guitarist to just paint their melodies right on top. Fun fact, this was also a huge deal in Baroque music. All right, so we've got our canvas, that repeating chord pattern. Now let's look at the actual brushstrokes, the specific kinds of notes that give flamenco its unmistakable melodic voice.
Everything kicks off with the nota de inicio, the starting note. And this is way more than just a place to begin. This single note is like a key that unlocks the whole song. It sets the entire mood and tells you exactly what kind of flamenco journey you're about to go on.
Then you've got the nota de reposo. This is the resting note. Think of it like a comma in a long sentence. It's that critical moment where the singer can pause, take a breath, and just let the emotion hang in the air before diving back in. It's absolutely essential for all that dramatic tension.
And connecting all of that together are the notas de paso, the passing notes. Look, if the main notes are the big pillars holding up the melody, these are all the intricate little flourishes and carvings that decorate them. They give the music its incredible texture and complexity.
And that really brings us to the soul of the sound, the ornamentation. In flamenco, these ornaments, these beautiful little melodic twists and turns, they're not just extra decorations sprinkled on top. They are so completely fused with the main melody that it's basically impossible to pull them apart. And this musical language has different dialects too. If you go to the city of Cádiz, for instance, you'll find the Orquestra de Centera. But forget about violins and cellos. This is an orchestra of guitars, lutes, and these cool mandolin-like instruments called bandurrias, all creating the one-of-a-kind sound of the Cádiz Carnival. And speaking of those lutes, the Spanish laúd can be traced all the way back to its ancestor, the Arabic oud. It's a great reminder of flamenco's deep historical roots, but it's also part of its future. You have modern artists like Amir Haddad who are actually bringing the ancient sound of the oud back into contemporary flamenco today. So, we've seen how history, economics, and music theory all get tangled together in the story of flamenco. It really leaves us with one last thought. If something as random as a tax law could completely define a golden age of music, it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What are the unseen forces, the economic and social pressures that are shaping all the music we're listening to right now? Thanks for watching.